to strap in and get ready.
The leaders in NRL Supercoach are incoming. Bringing you the ultimate insight to help you win your leagues and climb up the rankings.
You're now listening to the Insight NRL Show with your hosts, Brain, Matrix, and Whisperer.
G'day guys, welcome back to another episode of the Insight NRL Show, talking NRL Supercoach and coming into the Insight Unlimited subscriber Q&A, which is where our subscribers, our Insight Unlimited members get to ask their questions ahead of every single round of NRL Supercoach. So we're going to cover a lot of them tonight. Hopefully you're all well, and thanks for tuning in. We've got some absolute cracker questions coming up very soon that I'm going to cover. We're going to use NRL SC Stats and the Compare tool because we do have a lot of options this week. We're coming into a few injuries. Teams are trying to get together a decent 17 this week, and we're going to be relying on our bench depth. So we're going to be looking at a lot of questions around front row forward and comparisons between Barnett and Tarpany. So we'll chat about that and much more. So let's kick things off with the first question, being a pretty broad one from Beardy77. 5 trades left with Payne Haas, Young, and Asako. Who do I trade? I think for me, this is a pretty easy answer in Payne Haas. Unfortunately, Payne Haas, the news has come out that he's going to miss the rest of the season. He's out with a Liz Frank injury. So that, to put in comparison, is the same injury that Mitchell Moses and Kalen Ponga suffered this year. So not good for Payne Haas or Ezra Mam on that matter, or the Broncos. But I'd be trading Payne Haas, mate. So Dom Young is, all reports are that he's aiming for round 24. So I don't think it's worth at this time of the season trading out a guy that's only going to miss 1 week, especially because he's on the bye this week. We weren't expecting him to play anyway. So hopefully he's back and doesn't miss much time. And Jermaine Asako's been named this week. He's still got to get through a fitness test or two before he plays. And unfortunately he does play on Sunday at 2 p.m, which makes it pretty tricky for us to work out who we're going to bail on Asako to if we really did need to trade him out. I can't see him missing more than a week based on what NRL physio said either. Basically said that these lateral ankle sprains, usually the bark is worse than the bite. So as an example, I guess we could probably see him coming back the week after. Even if he does miss 1 week, it's very hard to see him miss 2 weeks off the back of that. So I'd trade I'd trade Payne Haas that's going to be out for the season before I'd trade Young and Asako. And it also depends on what your team structure looks like as well, Beardy. So hard for me to answer without an in-depth look at your team. But in saying that, I think it's a pretty easy decision to go with Haas, mate. Guys, what we will do is we'll hop over to the next page so that we can start answering these with NRL SC Stats in the background. All right, let's get the page up, hey? So the second question, I should say, we're going to move into Lockie Carr. He broke Haas, so if anybody wants to know who is the culprit to rule out Haas for the year, it was Lockie here. Which 2RF should I break this week? I'm moving Curran up to front row forward, which, look, I think if you have the ability to do that, it's a good move. Now, we've got to compare a few good 2RF options, and these are probably the 5 guys that I'd look at. I'd probably consider Eli Katoa definitely being what we would consider to be a top 5 2RF, but the fact that he's injured and he's out this week means that we are a little bit limited if you don't have him. If you do have him, I'm assuming you probably do if you're in the running, or if you've got a pretty solid team, you'd likely have Katoa. So, I mean, I'm assuming people have Fafita, people have Gus maybe, but there's Hamoli Olakawatu, Keon Kalamatangi, and Cam Murray. I could probably throw Isaiah Yeo in here as well, but we'll leave him out because we are talking about a Yeo comparison a little bit later in the podcast. So basically, if you ask me to pick who you're going to trade in this week and money was an issue, or you wanted to save a little bit of cash, I think Cam Murray's perfect. He's only 513k, which is probably the cheapest we're going to see Cam Murray in a very long time. This is actually the season low for him. This is the cheapest that he's been all season, and hasn't really got going this year. But I'd like to think that the Rabbitohs aren't going to rest their players in the run home. They're obviously they're out of contention for the most part, but I don't see Cam Murray wanting to rest. I don't see Keon wanting to rest. So they're both fantastic options. I think Keon earned his price tag of 695k this year. So if you don't have Keon and you've got the money to spend, I'd probably look at someone like Keon or Hamoli, who, you know, Keon more base stats, Hamoli more attacking upside, in my opinion. We see here he's got a higher score of 118 this year, Keon 133. I'm not really going to spend too much time talking about David Fifita or Gus Crichton, because if you don't have one of them two or both of them, my answer would be one of them. But I'm just going to assume, Lockie, that you've got both of those guys. These are the three guys, Hamoli, Keon, and Cam Murray, that I probably would look to move to. When we're looking at availability, obviously Hamoli's missed the last couple of games after his little Origin incident, so we won't hold that against him Supercoach wise. I'm not going to discriminate. I want to bring in the best player. So when we're talking attacking upside for these guys, I'd probably look at Hamoli as number one with attacking upside. Just, when we see his ability to get over close to the line, we see him and DCE connect pretty regularly on that right edge too. And Manly have a nice little run home. They've got Raiders, they've got the Warriors into the Tigers the next 2 weeks. And that's obviously quarterfinal and semi-final, or prelim final and semi-final. So definitely a nice little draw there. They've got the Bulldogs in the head-to-head grand final, which isn't ideal, into the Sharks. So it's a tough little 2-game stretch there to finish the season. If we look at Keon and Cam Murray's draws, they've got Melbourne this week, which isn't ideal, but then they've got the Tigers, Knights, and then they finish with the Penrith Panthers and the Roosters 26 and 27. I'm going to assume that the Roosters don't rest their players, but it's hard to tell this far out at the moment. We need to see in a couple of weeks what the ladder looks like. But for me, if you're going to pick one, mate, to break, I mean, I'd hate for you to break Hamoli Olakau'atu, but I think he's the pick in this one, unfortunately. I own him. So, please don't break him. Keep him in one piece. I need him. The next question from Edge. If money wasn't an issue, would you go Turbo or Ponga? Same question for Tarpany or Barnett. So let's kind of split these in two, and we'll answer the first part first. Who would I pick out of Turbo and Ponga? I think it's a pretty easy decision. I'll move the question off the screen just so that everyone can see. It's a pretty easy decision for me. We've got to look down here at the draw. Kalen Ponga has the Tigers this week and is a prime captaincy option. Obviously, Cleary, he plays the third game of the round, so you could use him as a VC into a Kalen Ponga C if you had that. Don't get me wrong, Turbo, absolutely fantastic run. And if you can have both, great. I'm assuming you probably have Teddy there as that other fullback. So if you're choosing between Turbo and you're choosing between Ponga, Ponga is incredibly cheap as well in comparison. He's only 648K. Turbo, you're going to pay an extra 230K to get, which money matters at the end of the season here. So would I pick Ponga or Trbojevic? It's pretty easy for me. I'd definitely be picking Ponga with that draw. Tigers, Sharks being the only hard matchup for them. Then they've got South and the Gold Coast Titans, which could probably be the two best matchups for semi and grand final head-to-head if you're in some cash comps. Kalen Ponga's draw is fantastic. And Manly's enter the season, like we just saw with Hamoli, could be a little bit trickier than we actually think, being the Bulldogs into the Sharks. So Kalen Ponga is my pick there in that question. And then the second part of the question was, would I pick Tarpany or Mitchell Barnett? And it's probably another question of, do you have the coin to get both? Like, do you have the coin to get Turbo and Barnett? I'd probably pick Tarpany if I'm completely honest. I bought Joseph Tarpany in round 15 and he has not let me down. Or maybe he's let me down once. I'm looking through his scores here. He's had one score sub 58 since round 15. So this is when I bought him here. He's gone 58, 89. Then he's gone 55, 68, 60, 71, and 98. And we're seeing here that the minutes is pretty steady around that 55 mark. So that looks like what we can probably expect from Ricky Stewart and Tarpany moving forward is around that 55. And if he's scoring you anywhere around that 70 mark, I think he's going to be a fantastic option. In saying that, Mitch Barnett, maybe the only kicker for me picking Tarpany over Barnett is the round 27 bye. Just transparency, this is actually my front row forward 1 and 2 here. So I'm buying Barnett this week and I've had Tarpany for a while now. So I love both as an option, but I just think the fact that Tarpany's cheaper and has no more buys left for the rest of the season, just it kind of gives me that peace of mind that I know that I'm going to have a player on the park every single game. And we know that round 27 is going to be absolute carnage. So we're going to need to be very aware of what's going on there. So if my answers are Ponga and Tarpany, mate, you've got 6 trades left as well. So you're in a pretty good spot. So having 4 trades left after this week, that allows you to have a bit more flexibility in your head-to-head matchups. So that's my play, mate. Next question from Melmo. Is it worth trading one of Galvin, Brown or Campbell to Ponga or Turbo? Now, we just spoke about Ponga versus Turbo, but I want to kind of talk a little bit more around Campbell, Galvin and Brown and who I would trade out of these options. Now, look, Lockie Galvin's been outstanding. You know, he's 607K, so there's a bit of cash there to use for you if you did want to move him on. Look at the Tigers draw, and the Tigers, don't get me wrong, they're not a good team at all. But the Knights have been known to be pretty leaky defensively. You know, the Souths have been incredibly ordinary and incredibly leaky on their edges. Manly are definitely not what we would consider to be a stalwart in defence. The only concern for me, and maybe the kicker here to trade Galvin instead of trading Brown or Campbell, is the fact that round 26 being a bye with head-to-head grand final, not a good spot to be in. If you've already got like a Samuel Afainu, you've got Galvin, maybe you've got Api Coruscant. I doubt you'd probably have anybody else from the Tigers, but those three seem to be pretty well owned. Copping those three, and then also the guys from the Storm are likely going to be rested in round 26, so they don't have to travel to Townsville. So not a good situation to be in if you're stuck with three Tigers and then 3 or 4 Storm guys. Harry Grant, maybe you bought Munster as a bit of a pod. Maybe you've got Jerome Hughes, you've got Eli Katoa who's just gone down injured. Maybe you've got Ryan Pappenhausen. There's a lot of popular options there from the Storm that are likely going to be rested in round 26. So, something to keep an eye on to not overstack on Tigers. And whilst I think that Lachie Galvin is a perfectly fine hold, I think if you were asking me to pick one, I'd pick Galvin to trade, purely because I think Campbell, like you mentioned here, or like someone else mentions about Campbell very soon, the upside is there for Jaden Campbell. And Dylan Brown has been absolutely solid. He just scored 90 and 69 in his last 2 games. He does come up against Penrith, but I think things get a little bit easier for him there. And if you're a head-to-head player, you're going to want to make sure that you have Dylan Brown against St. George in the finals. And then, you know, in round 27, I can imagine Dylan Brown's going to score pretty well against the West Tigers if you're chasing some late rank. So, I'd be picking the only player that has a bye left to trade out in Lachie Galvin to answer your question on that one. And I think I've already answered the Tom Trbojevic versus Kalen Ponga question. I'll be going with Ponga every day of the week. So hopefully that clears that up. The next question, last reserve, Plath or Kai Pearce-Paul? Now, I didn't bring anything up on Plath versus Kai Pearce-Paul, but what I will do is I'll get the draw up very quickly. Now, we've got Plath, the Finns. They're playing against the Warriors this week at home, so not a bad matchup for them. But SJ's back. It's the little finals tour there for SJ, so I think they're going to want to play some good footy to finish up the season. And Kai Pearce-Paul's playing the Tigers, mate. And anybody playing the Tigers, you don't usually want to sit players that are playing against the Tigers. You know, he's running at that right edge as well. So I like Kai Pearce-Paul to play over Plath this week. And also, yes, Plath's been scoring relatively well, but I'm not 100% sold on that upside continuing for him. So I think, the way I'd go, I'd last reserve on Kai Pearce-Paul just for the upside. I know that he hasn't had an attacking stat this year. I feel like he's due one. And if he's ever going to score, it's going to be against the Tigers. Let's hope that he turns up for owners. Next question here, looking to go rogue this round, moving Payne Haas to Taniela Paseka as my front row forward too. Allows me to boost and go sharp to Ponga and Mulatalo to To'o. Mate, if you can get Ponga and To'o this week for sharp and Mulatalo, that is absolutely worth doing. And if we bring up Taniela Paseka's year, and I'll get the question off the screen, Taniela Paseka's had a bit of time out with that finger injury. So as you can see here, he's missed round 16, he's missed round 18 and 19, and then come off the bench in round 20. You'll see here, obviously, his minutes were only 7 minutes, and then he got injured. He played 38 before that, and then he played 30 in his first game back from that injury. He did play 51 against the Roosters last week, and now he's coming off the bye. So Taniela Paseka's price, though, is the big appeal for me. The 302K is so cheap. For a guy that is very clear to be playing 50-odd minutes, I think we can probably bank on him playing at least 45 minutes, anywhere upwards of 55 to 60. He did play 61 against the Warriors this year. So there is every chance he plays maybe 45 to 50 minutes on the run home. And I think for a 300K guy that's going to be his starting prop at Manly, and, doesn't have a bye left for the rest of the year and can be what we would call an enabler in the FPL world, where he will enable you to go and get that sharp and sharp to Ponga and Mulatalo to To'o trade moving. So I'm all for using your last boost to get in Taniela Paseka. And I think Paseka and Willison are probably the two guys that I would look at in that sub 400K bracket as a front row forward replacement for Payne Haas. If you've already got the likes of AFB, if you've already got your Tarpanies, if maybe you've got a Fainu that you're more than happy to play at front row forward too, and you want to free up some cash with that moves and you with that trade, and you've got potentially 4, 5, 6 trades left, and you can afford to do that, I'm all for Paseka or Willison. So pull the trigger on that one, mate. That's a very nice little trade there. Now we've got the 7th question. Bray, need to bring in Ponga this week. So he's thinking the way I'm thinking, which is good. Who to trade out of Burton, Campbell, or Galvin? Now, we talked about Campbell and Galvin recently. Would I trade Matt Burton out? I just don't. And Bray mentions the upside in Campbell. He could net 100K by trading Campbell because Campbell's got much more cash on the board there. However, he has the biggest ceiling of the 3 and could be handy in head-to-head finals. And that's my thinking as well. I think that the Newcastle matchup in the grand final for head-to-head could be nice. It is in McDonald Jones, but he does have a couple of games coming up left at Seabus up in the Gold Coast as well. It is against the Sharks and the Sydney Roosters though. Whilst I'm not a massive fan of the draw for Jaden Campbell, I think the fact that there's a goal kicking upside for him, we know that they run the ball through him a fair bit unless they're targeting a very leaky Dean Mariner and Corey Oates-Edge like they did last week. I don't think that's going to happen too often. But I'm definitely not trading Matt Burton. He's too cheap, and 2, his draw's too good for the run home. If we see here, he's got Dragons, Dolphins, Warriors, Manly, and the Cowboys on the run home, all considered good matchups. So I'm holding Matt Burton. He's a big piece of that. He is a goal kicker. Campbell's a goal kicker. Galvin isn't. And I think you're getting rid of the player on the worst team. That's the way that I would look at it. So I'd be trading out Galvin and keeping Campbell and Burton just based on that upside, I think, mate. So that's probably the way that I would play that. Ferg, 4 trades left. Is Kai Pearce-Paul to Murray or Yo a play with Katoa out? Currently have Fafita, Gus, Katoa, and Nikora. So obviously Fafita, Gus, and Nikora. Gus isn't playable this week because he's on the bye. So you'd probably do need to make a trade there. So if we look at the comparison between Cam Murray and Isaiah Yo, from a price perspective, I don't think it really matters. Saving 80K, getting Murray instead of Yo, I don't really think it matters too much. You're probably going to get the same amount of minutes on the run home from both of them. If we look at season averages, season average of 56 for Murray is way unders in comparison to what we're used to from him. And then the season average of 70 from Isaiah Yo, you're basically paying and getting 130K discount on what his season average is, just due to the fact that he had a few quiet games through that origin period. So he only played 4 games from round 13 through to round 21. So, that price has dropped. 49, a 56 and a 63 in there has seen those prices plummet for Yo. I think you're getting him at bottom dollar. We see Cam Murray's been out injured or suspended a fair bit here over the last couple of months, 3 months. I do like Cam Murray as an option, but if you're comparing him to Isaiah Yo, I'd probably go with Yo. Just due to the fact that he's on a good team. There is a resting risk, don't get me wrong, but as someone pointed out to me on the show last night, Isaiah Yo wasn't rested in round 27 last year, but also Penrith didn't rest any of their guns in round 27 last year. They also rested Yo, or gave him a match off the bench, and also rested him recently. So he didn't play against the Dolphins, and he came off the bench but came into the starting team very late, but played minimal minutes, I think. He only played 56 minutes against the Cowboys, backing up after Origin 2. So, which is definitely unders in what we're used to from Yo. He'll play 80 minutes for the run home, I'd like to think. They've also got the minor premiership to play for, the Panthers. So, they're only 1 game behind the Storm now. And I think that's one thing to look at. I know that the good coaches aren't really going to care too much about whether they come first or second, because they get another bite at the cherry regardless, and they get a home final. But I think having the minor premiership on your mantle is always something that these guys will be aiming for. So I would assume that the Panthers would like to prove a point and sail home into first place, and hope that the Storm can drop a game here or there. So my pick's Isaiah Yo, mate, to go to answer your question, and that leaves you with 3 trades left, which is a decent spot to be in, to be fair. So that's the way I would go with that one. Now, the next question here, we've got 6 trades and a boost left from John O.D. Looking at Pappy to Ponga or Turbo, thinking Ponga. Yep, I completely agree with that. That leaves me 475K. So do I go Fainu to Barnett at front row forward, or hold for now? Curran is also an option to shop up to Barnett, other front row forwards. So he's currently got AFB, Hughes, and enough. So the question becomes, are you comfortable playing AFB and Fainu every single week? If you've got Curran at 2RF as well, depends on whether your Nuff is a dual position front row forward 2RF Nuff or not. But Could get in Joey Tarpany as well. And look, if you can get Joey Tarpany or you can get Mitch Barnett, I think we compared them both earlier today, but they're both fantastic options, and you just go with the cheaper one. I think, Joey Tarpany and Mitch Barnett probably have the same. Barnett's got a bit more try-scoring upside in him, but Tarpany's base is a little bit better, I would say. Season average of 66 versus 71. Maybe the minutes are there for Mitch Barnett, but you're paying $200K, $170K to get Mitch Barnett instead of Joey Tarpany. So yeah, I'm probably leaning with Tarpany over this one. If you can get him in and you can have AFB and Tarpany, that's also the kicker for me, because I think the big issue with having AFB and Barnett is that it leaves you very, very open and vulnerable in round 27. Not a position you want to be in. So I would definitely go with Tarpany just off the back of the fact that there's no buy incoming there. Now, we also have another one from John O'D. Also, Pappy to Ponga or Turbo. It's Ponga. I've kind of went into detail about that, so I won't dive in too far again. Now, this next question, we're going to provide a little bit of a team look here as well, because Pommy here has 5 trades left, 16K in the bank, so not a lot of money. Halfbacks are Cleary and Brown, as we can see on the screen here. 5/8s are Galvin and Trindle. Also have Jai Gray at fullback. Who do I move on to help create space for Ponga? So I'm assuming the move will be, it'll be Jai Gray to, it'll probably be Jai Gray or Braden Trindle up to Ponga. And when we look at Trindle versus Gray, I think the option there, if you can hold on to Trindle for 1 week, there's every chance he should be back next week. We see these hamstring strains and it looked more precautionary, but they've held him out this week just as a precaution. I think you'll see him back next week for the Sharks. So I'd probably hold on to Trindle just due to the fact that the upside's there. Jai Gray, don't get me wrong, has been awesome, but I would be trading Jai Gray up to Ponga, which means how do we create the money to get him up there? Now, maybe there's a few different ways to look at this, but I wouldn't be touching your front row unless maybe what you could do. Your 2RF looks a little bit weak, so I wouldn't really want to pull from that too much, but we're going to have to create, what are we looking at? What's Jai Gray priced at? I'll quickly work this out. Maybe I'll search it on here very quickly. Bear with me. Jai Gray is 487K. So not amazing. Not heaps of cash there. Definitely way more cash in getting in Trindle, but I think I would rather keep Trindle as a playable option so that I have so I have a decent 5/8 for head-to-head grand finals. So I would probably, what am I looking at? I need 200K really to go Jai Gray to Ponga. So I need to create 200K from somewhere. And when I look down at this team and I have a look at the center wing money that is going on here, like you've got To'o, Lomax, Karaz, Young, Garrick, and then you've got Isaac Tungo and Kale Iro, who have been both fantastic as well. I think there is your ticket to free up some coin at center wing. When I look at teams that are stacked at center wing, you're going to want to play 2 halfbacks. So there's 1 reserve gone. You've also got Cotter up at front row forward. I don't know whether I'd want to sit Cotter. I think he's playable every week. You've also then got Katoa next week when he comes back, and you've got Tedesco on the bench, and you're going to probably want to play 2 fullbacks when you've got Ponga there. So for me, I think you definitely need to trade a center wing. So I'd be freeing up cash, maybe even enough. Or you could go down to a really cheap playable option. I haven't looked at center wing nuffs recently, but I can do a bit of research for you and get back to you in the Discord, mate. Who would I trade out of these 7? I'd probably trade Isaac Tungo. I think you can find enough cash by just nuffing him. You've already got To'o there as well. So I feel like you've got a piece of the Penrith pie there. I feel like Kale Iro's also starting to come into his own and getting a lot more ball there from Trindle on the left edge. So I'd probably want to hold him as my 6th center wing because he's playable most weeks and incredibly safe. Nuff out Tungo, and then you can go Jai Gray straight up to Ponga. I think this week would be probably the play that I would go with, mate. So hopefully that helps you. Now we've got a couple more questions left to wrap things up. So what we'll do is we'll bring this next one up on the screen. 2 trades left from Roadkill. Is it simply a matter of holding for a rainy day or stuff it, try to get the team right and pray hard? Look, I've never been a religious person. But I tell you what, we're going to need to do some praying this year, because if last year is anything to go off, I feel like we got led into a false sense of security at the back end of the year. Where last year didn't have a ton of injuries hit us too hard in rounds 24, 25, even 26 was fine. And then round 27, we had injuries, but we also had lots of restings. most of the teams that were in contention but weren't really going anywhere in the ladder, they just thought, bugger it, we'll just have a week off and give our blokes a rest before we come into the quarterfinals, prelim finals. So having 2 trades in the bank, I have 2 trades now after I'm making this 1 trade to get Barnett this week. So I think what we need to do, if you've got 3 trades or 2 trades around that mark, you just need to hold tight and hope to God that you don't cop too many injuries for the run home. I think they're coming anyway. But just having those 2 trades there to be able to pivot when a really popular guy goes down injured, I really hope we don't have that as a thing that's happening this year, but I can almost guarantee that we're going to be hit with 1 or 2 unexpected injuries. HIAs are also incredibly common these days. You go into a tackle wrong and you're in all sorts. So definitely, I would hold those 2 trades. I think at the end of the day, we hopefully should have our teams well enough set up that we have 20 to 21 playable options week in, week out. And if you don't, it's a good lesson for next year that by this time of the year, by the head-to-head finals starting, you definitely want to have your team solidified by then. So I'm assuming roadkill you do. 2 trades left. Hold those trades, mate, and you're going to need them at some point. And look, if by some instance we don't need them, round 27, I can almost guarantee you're going to need them with all the rests. So that's I'd hold on to them, mate, and that's my same advice for anybody with 3 trades or less. I'd probably try my best to hold on to them. And we've also got another one here. I already covered that one, didn't I? So there you go. Happy days, short memory. Guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight maybe into some of the questions you had around whether to choose Tarpany or Barnett. We had a lot of questions around Ponga as well, and he's my pick nearly every single time. If you can get Kalen Ponga this week or even Greg Marju to complement that, I think that's a fantastic option. The Knights match up against the Tigers is going to be the best in the comp this round. Maybe the Panthers against the Eels is another game that you can target. So it'll be a Cleary into a Kalen Ponga type week for captaincy, I would have thought. But good luck this weekend, guys. Obviously, your footy kicks off tomorrow night, Thursday night, as well as the NRLW. Keep an eye out on that. If you're playing Mixer as well, jump in the league. The description in the description below of this video or this podcast, you'll see the link there to jump into the Mixer. Give it a go. It's a really good time. But guys, if you haven't yet, hit subscribe, hit like, and we will see you on the Sunday wrap up. Have a good one.